He sat alone in a quiet room, staring at his phone. The screen wasn't broken, but his heart was. The headline hit harder than anything he had ever read before. Malcolm-Jamal Warner is gone. That single line was all it took to break him. Jaleel White, the man the world still remembered as Steve Urkel, froze. He didn't yell. He didn't slam the phone down. He simply collapsed to the floor as though gravity itself had betrayed him. For a moment, time stood still. His hands covered his face. His shoulders shook, and his breath came in short bursts. When he finally found the strength to speak, his voice wasn't strong. It wasn't even clear. It was a whisper, a sob carried out of the deepest part of his soul. "Not my Theo. Not my Theo." Someone nearby, a journalist who had been outside the studio where Jaleel had just finished a podcast, captured the heartbreaking moment on camera. Within hours, the clip spread across the internet like wildfire. Millions of people watched in silence as Jaleel broke down, grieving not just a co-star, but a man he had loved like a brother. The internet responded instantly. Old interviews and clips of the two resurfaced. Fans replayed moments filled with laughter, respect, and loyalty. People shared the line that crushed them the most. "I thought I had one more hug left. Just one more." Twitter exploded with tributes. The hashtag #NotMyTheo rose to the #1 trend across the country. Fans lit candles in their homes. Celebrities cried live on their own feeds. This wasn't just another Hollywood story. This was personal. At the funeral, Jaleel arrived carrying nothing but white roses. Dressed in a simple black suit, without sunglasses to hide his eyes, he walked straight to the casket. There was no media, no stage lights, no music, just him, his grief, and the silence. He laid the roses down and whispered softly, "I love you, brother, always." Then he kissed the casket. That moment wasn't televised, but word of it spread. People felt it because grief that raw doesn't need an audience. This wasn't just the loss of Malcolm-Jamal Warner. It was the loss of a generation's heartbeat. Malcolm wasn't only Theo Huxtable. To many, he was the older brother we all wished we had. He was steady, humble, and real. He never chased fame, never sought attention. He was a quiet strength in Hollywood, and to Jaleel, he was more than that. He was family. The day Jaleel first saw the news, he had just stepped out of the shower. A towel was still hanging over his shoulders. His phone buzzed, and he thought nothing of it, probably just another message or maybe a fan tag. But when he unlocked it, his world collapsed. Malcolm-Jamal Warner dies unexpectedly at 53. He froze. The world didn't just slow down, it stopped. He didn't breathe, didn't blink, didn't believe. Slowly, he placed the phone on the table, his eyes glued to the screen as if staring hard enough would change the words. Maybe it was a mistake, maybe a rumor, maybe some cruel internet prank, but it wasn't. His knees gave out. He sank to the floor with a quiet thud. No dramatic cry, no staged collapse, just silence. His hands covered his face, his whole body trembling. And then, from somewhere deep inside, came the broken words, "Not my Theo." The tears came in waves, not just light drops, but heavy, uncontrollable sobs. This wasn't mourning a colleague. This was mourning a man who had stood beside him through the darkest seasons of his life. When Hollywood mocked him for being too goofy, when producers dismissed him, when the world reduced him to just a punchline, Malcolm was there. He had always made space for Jaleel. And now that space was empty. The footage of Jaleel breaking down was never meant to go public. But once it leaked, the internet felt his grief in real time. People wrote, "Yo, this broke me. Jaleel crying like that, I lost it." You could hear his soul shatter. Hashtag spread globally. Hashtag not my Theo. Hashtag rest strong MALC. Hashtag JAL White breakdown. Celebrity deaths had been mourned before. But this was different. This wasn't polished or rehearsed. This wasn't for cameras or press releases. This was raw pain, captured by chance, and the world couldn't look away. Soon, fans began sharing clips of the two together through the years. 1991. A charity basketball game. Malcolm passes the ball. Jaleel scores. They high-five, no words, just pure joy. 1997. A joint interview. When asked about the pressures of being young black actors, Malcolm says, "It's heavy, but at least I've got Jay with me." Jaleel laughs. "That's my guy. Always has been." 2015, a random fan catches them grabbing coffee in Los Angeles. No entourage. No flashing lights, just old friends, laughing like kids again. And now, only one was left. Later, that night, Jaleel posted on Instagram, just a black screen. No caption, no hashtags, no sound, silence. Within minutes, celebrities filled the comments. Taraji P. Henson, "Holding you in prayer." Zendaya, "This one hurts deep." Anthony Anderson, "Real ones don't forget each other. We feel this too." Oprah, simply a broken heart emoji. The world had seen co-stars grieve before, but this was different. This was family loss. For Jaleel, the memories were endless. He remembered the first time they met, two kids caught up in the Hollywood machine, surrounded by fake smiles and endless contracts. But Malcolm was different. He saw Jaleel for who he really was: goofy, brilliant, anxious, and real. While the public painted them as rivals, Family Matters versus The Cosby Show, they knew the truth. They weren't rivals at all. They were each other's safe place. When Jaleel was being bullied online, Malcolm showed up at his house with pizza in one hand and old Cosby scripts in the other. "Let's remember why we started," he told him. When Malcolm's father passed in 2007, Jaleel stayed by his side all night, just listening. They laughed, they fought, they grew up in front of the world. But their truest moments happened far from the cameras. And now, half of that bond was gone. 3 days later, the private funeral was held. Jaleel arrived early. He didn't hide his grief. He didn't wear shades to block the tears. He wanted people to see the pain. At the casket, a close friend overheard him whisper, "I love you. Man, I wasn't ready." Then he kissed the casket. That unseen moment rippled across the country. Because grief like this doesn't need a stage. It burns silently, whether anyone is watching or not. Later, Jaleel recorded a short voice memo and posted it online. It was only 6 seconds long. His voice cracked as he said, "I don't want your likes. I just want him back." That was enough. The world didn't need more. They were grieving alongside him. The most haunting part wasn't just the loss. It was what could have been. Just 2 days before Malcolm passed, they had planned to meet for dinner. No agents, no cameras, just the two of them. Malcolm had even sent a text. "This time, I'll finally tell you the thing I never said." But that message will never be explained. And that is what hurts Jaleel the most. Not the funeral, not even the headlines, but the unfinished story. When he finally went live on Instagram, against his team's advice, his face was unshaven, his eyes swollen, his voice barely audible. Millions tuned in. "I don't know how to do this," he said. Tears streamed down his cheeks. "He was my brother, and now he's gone, and I didn't get to say goodbye." Within minutes, the clip went viral. Hashtags like #RIP Malcolm-Jamal and #JALIL breaks filled every feed. Fans shared old crossover clips of Theo and Urkel joking, roasting, and defending each other. People began to see the truth. These weren't just actors on different shows. These were real men who had loved each other like family. Later that night, an old behind-the-scenes video surfaced from a charity episode in 2009. In it, Malcolm teased Jaleel, "If I ever die before you, man, you better cry on camera. I want tears. I want snot. I want ugly crying." The crowd watching the leaked clip was gutted, because that's exactly what Jaleel had given him: the ugly cry, the soul-deep grief, the unbearable silence of losing someone you can't replace. On the kitchen floor, curled up and trembling, Jaleel whispered the words that had already echoed across the world, "Not my Theo." And in that moment, everyone finally understood. This wasn't about television. It wasn't about nostalgia. It wasn't even about fame. This was about two men who had carried each other through the weight of childhood stardom, who had survived the stereotypes, who had leaned on each other when the rest of the world didn't see them. This was about love, brotherhood, and the kind of grief that leaves you unfinished, because behind the jokes, behind the catchphrases, Behind all the fame, Jaleel White had lost his brother forever, and the world had lost Theo. Jaleel White once whispered words that would haunt him for the rest of his life. "I'll never know what he meant, and that's going to kill me forever." After Malcolm-Jamal Warner passed away, the days that followed were filled with grief, shock, and an overwhelming sense of loss. Fans gathered outside Malcolm's childhood home in New Jersey, creating a living memorial. They brought candles, taped posters to the walls, and left flowers by the doorstep. In the middle of the grieving crowd, someone lifted a giant banner. It read, "You are his Theo. Not Bill Cosby's Theo. Not the world's Theo. Not the network's Theo. You are Jaleel's Theo." That was the truth no one expected. To black men in Hollywood, often placed in competition by outsiders, had built something deeper than fame, deeper than scripts or shows. Their friendship was real. It wasn't about television or roles. It was about love, healing, and a bond that could never be written into a script. When Malcolm died, the world didn't just lose an actor, it lost a legacy. At Malcolm's memorial service, Jaleel stood trembling, his lips shaking as he tried to find words. Through his tears, he managed to say, "You taught me how to love my craft. But more than that, you taught me how to love myself." He then placed a single, worn-out hat on Malcolm's casket. It wasn't just any hat, it was from Family Matters, with Malcolm's initials stitched inside. It was their private joke, something only they understood. After laying it down, Jaleel whispered into the silence for the cameras, for the fans, and for himself, "Goodbye, Theo. I'll see you in reruns, but I'll feel you in the quiet." The world hasn't stopped crying since. On the morning of the burial, as the sun slowly rose, Jaleel arrived at the gravesite alone. No cameras, no crowds, just him and the silence. But silence wasn't peace that morning. It was deafening. He knelt beside the fresh grave of his brother in spirit and placed a folded note into the soft dirt. It read, "You were more than Theo. You were my compass when the world lost direction." As he stood, a gentle wind moved through the trees. To anyone else, it was just nature. But to Jaleel, it felt like Malcolm whispering one last goodbye. A few hours earlier, the memorial service had ended. People saw the speeches, the music, the hugs. But what the live stream didn't capture was the most heartbreaking moment of all. Malcolm's mother had stayed strong and silent through most of the ceremony. But then she stepped forward, holding his favorite sweater and shaking hands. She didn't say a word. She simply laid the sweater across her son's casket. Then, her knees buckled, and she let out a scream so raw, so painful, that the entire room froze. Jaleel rushed to her side, holding her like she was his own mother. He whispered, it's okay," but he knew the truth. Nothing was okay. Nothing would ever be okay again. Outside, former castmates from The Cosby Show gathered in small groups. Tempest Bledsoe stared at the sky, mouthing a prayer only she could hear. Keshia Knight Pulliam cried quietly into her hands. When someone asked who should speak next, all eyes turned to Jaleel. He stepped forward, trying to hold himself together. But the very first word, family, broke him. His voice cracked. He dropped the microphone, covered his face, and wept. It wasn't just grief for Malcolm. It was grief for the years gone by, the brotherhood they once had, the laughter, the struggles, the memories. This wasn't just losing a friend. This was losing an era. After the service, fans gathered outside again, leaving more flowers, candles, and even old VHS tapes of Family Matters and The Cosby Show. They placed them on the ground like holy relics. One sign read, "He made us laugh until we cried." But later that night, the world was shaken even more. A video surfaced online, something never meant for the public. It showed Malcolm and Jaleel together in a diner, just weeks before the tragedy. They were laughing, teasing each other about getting older. Malcolm jokingly called Jaleel Urkel 2.0. Jaleel called Malcolm America's last big brother. Then Malcolm said something that chills fans today. "If anything ever happens to me, make sure they play Stevie Wonder at my funeral. I don't want tears, I want soul." The video ends with them clinking glasses. At the time, it was just a friends enjoying life. Now, it feels like a goodbye letter from beyond. 3 days after the funeral, Jaleel broke his silence online. He posted a black and white photo of Malcolm smiling. The caption read, "I've laughed with many, but I've only cried for a few. You were one of the few. Goodbye, Theo. I love you." Man, the internet exploded with emotion. Thousands of comments poured in. Celebrities shared their memories. Fans wrote about how both shows had helped them through tough times. One story stood out. A little boy, no older than 10, stood outside Malcolm's home holding a cardboard sign that said, "He taught me how to be kind." Beside him, his mother whispered through tears, "My son didn't have a father, but Malcolm made him believe in family." Even in death, Malcolm was still shaping lives. Meanwhile, Jaleel withdrew from the spotlight. Friends said he wasn't the same anymore. He often dialed Malcolm's phone number just to hear the voicemail. "Hey, it's Malcolm. Leave a message. Make it funny." Jaleel never left a message. He just listened and hung up. They say grief is love with nowhere to go. For Jaleel, grief had become a fire that no fame, no crowd, and no tribute could ever put out. The world may keep moving, but for those who knew Malcolm or grew up watching him, it feels impossible to forget. He wasn't just Theo. He wasn't just a character on TV. He was hope. He was laughter. He was the reminder that family, whether on screen or in life, can hold us together. Now he's gone. But every time we hear the echo of laughter in reruns, every hug in a sitcom family, every lesson hidden inside a joke, Malcolm still lives. Rest in power, Malcolm-Jamal Warner. The tears haven't stopped, and maybe they never will. This story shattered more than one heart. We watched them grow up on screen. We believed in their friendship, and when Malcolm left, it felt like a part of our childhood left too. Jaleel didn't just lose a friend, he lost the only man who truly understood the weight of fame, the burden of being a symbol, and the beauty of being more than a role. When Jaleel cried, the world cried with him. If this story moves you, hold on to the people you love, because tomorrow is never promised. Some losses we don't recover from, we simply learn to carry them. Crying quietly in the dark. Malcolm-Jamal Warner's legacy is more than reruns. It's in every life he touched, every laugh he inspired, every moment of kindness he left behind. Gone too soon, but never forgotten.